Hey, today we are going to be talking about, superheroes and anti-heroes, just heroes in general versus their remake movies and reboots and crap like that. Alright, the event of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is, of course, bringing up this conversation. Alright, yeah. So, let's start this off with talking about Batman. Alright, the original Batman, TV show and Batman movie versus the new Dark Knight movies and the Dark Knight Rises and the Dark Knight and all that and Batman Begins. Just new versus old. Okay. Well, people often, consider the older movies really bad movies, which they are, but, if you were a true fan of a comic book, if you were a true comic book fan, then you would understand that those old TV shows and crap are very, they just, they know how to make a movie. They know how to make a comic book movie, because if you actually read comic books and stuff, you would realize that those stupid old shows and movies were exactly what a moving comic book would look like. And, if the costumes themselves were just a little bit different, it literally would be a moving comic book. But, yeah, just the whole style of, how it would be kabam, would, pop up on the screen and stuff, and the corny acting and corny costumes and stupidness, like the Adam West Batman is what I'm talking about. Now that, those people knew how to make a comic book movie. But, of course, I'm going to say that I like the Dark Knight better, with advanced technology, better costumes, and stuff like that. So, yeah, in this case, the remakes actually win. Yeah. So, let's talk about Hulk now, alright? This is one that actually I had to think about. I really actually had to think about this one. You wouldn't think I'd have to. I'm not talking about, the original Hulk as in, Hulk from, not Lou Ferrigno Hulk, from the old TV show. I'm talking about Hulk, the 2003 Hulk. I believe it was made in 2003. The Hulk with, what's his face? The one where, the main villain is, this guy who can touch anything and pretty much become that. If he touches metal, he becomes Metal Man for some reason. And if he touches something like electric or some kind of a power source, he'll become this giant, electrical guy. And even if he touches freaking water, he'll become a big water guy. Pretty badass villain. But that movie versus the Incredible Hulk from, I believe it was made in 2009. So yeah, let's start comparing and contrasting, I guess. Contrasting. Alright. Well, I definitely am gonna have to say a couple, advantages and, disadvantages with both movies, in strengths and weaknesses. Kind of almost like a superhero fight, but in movie form, alright? Well, the Incredible Hulk movie brought new technology to the table. They brought better CGI, a better villain, itself, and, just a certain feel that was pretty cool. And I liked Stan Lee's cameo in it, where he was an old guy who drank Hulk's blood and was like, whoa, and he drops the bottle. That was kind of cool. But the whole movie was just well done with super soldier crap and all that. And plus, the movie was left on a cliffhanger. It was left open, a lot of people don't see it, but the Abomination, the main monster from that movie, was still alive in the end of the movie. He would have crushed Hulk. The only reason Hulk won was because he used a metal chain to his advantage and choked the crap out of the Abomination. But the Abomination was still breathing at the end of it. And there was a guy who had, mutated DNA that dripped on his head, and his brain started moving around and, pulsating and crap and getting bigger, which is a reference to a classic villain, which I'm not going to give any spoilers, because I do believe they'll make a movie with that, and I think it would be best to be surprised, but I'm definitely not surprised. I've seen that coming. But then again, the original, well, I guess you could call it the original Hulk movie, just had a certain feel to it that was more comic booky, and kind of campy and corny. Not campy and corny like the Spider-Man movie, I mean really campy and corny. The special effects in that movie were actually pretty great for the time that, it came out, and, just pretty good movie. There's something that really attracts me to this movie, not in a weird way, I just mean, makes me, want to watch it again and stuff. There's this scene where Hulk fights a bunch of super dogs, monster dogs, Hulk dogs, and there's something about the CGI of them it's the same situation with the giant cockroach at the end of Men in Black. I can't tell if the CGI is really, really bad or really, really good. There's just something about it that looks cartoony, but for some reason that fits in this movie and it draws me to it. I really like the whole scene where Hulk's like fighting these monster dogs, like these hellhounds, kind of. That scene was really great. And the actual design of Hulk, the way he looked, just didn't look as menacing, but it looked more like what I think Hulk would look like if he was real. It was definitely kind of more intense, and Hulk was, I guess you could say, maybe a little bigger. But I thought the whole idea of, you know, if you hurt Hulk, he just becomes bigger and stronger, I thought that was a really stupid idea, because that just kind of makes him, you know, more stupid. That's like one of the reasons people hate Deadpool, because, you know, every time you, like, kill him, he pretty much just comes back almost stronger than he was before. He can't die. And that's the same thing with Hulk, really. So it's that kind of makes it stupid. But I don't know. I mean, it was a one-time thing. They didn't plan on doing any other movies, I don't think. It just went straight to the remake that came many years later. What was that, 8 or 9 years later? Or 7, 6. I don't feel like doing math. This is a different conversation. I just want to say that The Incredible Hulk, of course, wins, because it had a better villain, better CGI, I guess you could say more menacing, cooler Hulk design, and the design of the villain, you know, the Abomination, was just great. Great acting, you know, cool monster effects and cool, you know, action scenes. But the first movie, like I said, there was just something about it. It was comic booky, it was cartoony, it really fit. I really did like that movie, but it just wasn't as serious. It didn't take itself seriously. Definitely not as good as, you know, the newer one. Alright, now let's talk about Spider-Man, the star of this video. The original Spider-Man, which I was actually in the middle of watching before I made this video, versus the new Amazing Spider-Man, and, you know, the original Spider-Man series versus the new one that's coming with the Amazing Spider-Man 2. Okay, well, let's compare and contrast, I guess. Alright, so, yeah. Well, the new movies definitely have better effects. I mean, the first movie really pulled off the effects that it had. I mean, there's a scene that, you know, in the beginning of the movie, there's a scene where Peter Parker is, you know, first testing out, like, his powers after he climbs up the building, and he's running from building to building and jumping and stuff. Now, this scene, I mean, I try to ignore it because all the other effects are so, you know, pretty much good. And I try to ignore that, but it just looks like a freaking really crappy computer game, or like a GameCube game or something, where he's just like, you know, running, but then he jumps up in the air and it looks like normal Peter Parker, which is kind of not convincing, but it's really, really bad. But I try to ignore that, because obviously they didn't want to waste a lot of money on that scene when there's so many other scenes they had to get done perfectly. And the fact that it took them almost 18 years to make this movie is just freaking amazing. That's actually true. They, you know, first, you know, came up with the idea and crap way long ago. They were, you know, like working out the script, working out the design, the costume, everything for almost 18 whole years. But they wanted to wait until they had the right technology to make Spider-Man do what people wanted him to do, as in, you know, like CGI and stuff. And the CGI in the actual, you know, original Spider-Man movie is actually really convincing. It really looks like it's a guy in a suit, even when it isn't. You know, they did, you know, do more of, you know, guy in a suit than they did CGI in that movie. And the whole Green Goblin design in that movie is just brilliant. And the whole take on the Green Goblin was awesome. They really, you know, instead of ruining a classic Spider-Man villain, they really gave a classic Spider-Man villain a new, you know, feel, something better about him. I actually prefer that movie over some of the original comic books, which I'm a big comic book fan. You wouldn't think I'd say that. But the new Spider-Man movie had a cocky kind of Spider-Man, emo Spider-Man, and it was still pretty great. But I think it was kind of stupid the way they changed the suit in Part 2. And if you notice, 1 second Spider-Man's eyes are white, and another second they're reflective. I'm honestly going to say the first Spider-Man was way better. Like, comment, subscribe, please. I guess, yeah, I like the original Spider-Man more. That is going to wrap this video up, and goodbye.